The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you a songwriter? Are you looking to turn your songwriting passion into a full-time gig? Whether you are just at the start of your songwriting journey or a seasoned industry professional, this show is made for you. Welcome to the Songwriter Show, bringing together songwriting news, interviews, and community. Now, welcome your host, Sarantos.
Thank you for tuning in, and welcome back to the Songwriter Show. I'm your host, Sarantos. I'm a solo music artist who's been writing lyrics for as long as I can remember. Words are very important to me, and that's why I'm so thrilled to host this show. I strongly believe that every song is a story. The Songwriter Show is broadcast live on number one ranked W4CY Radio with listeners in all 206 countries in the world and every single state in the United States. The station is licensed with ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and Sound Exchange, with partnerships throughout the music industry, including iHeartRadio, with exposure to over 300 million listeners.
And now, welcome this week's special guest.
Our first guest tonight is Amanda B. She's originally from New York, but moved to Nashville to write songs with Grammy-nominated Crew 22. Welcome to the Songwriter Show, Amanda.
Hi, thank you.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm so happy to have you on the show. We're going to have some fun tonight. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up. When was the first time you picked up an instrument?
Oh gosh, the first time I picked it. Well, when I popped out, I let out a wail, and my mom literally said, when I was born, she's going to have a great voice. And I was singing all the time, much to sometimes the consternation of my teachers at school. I would just like break out into song. It was a childhood musical, and then I started piano lessons. I don't know, it's some young age, but I wasn't really serious. And then I picked up flute, and I was sort of serious, and I picked up piano again, and like around 9 or something, and more serious then. But yeah, it was just always, it was a constant theme, but I was really I was a writer. I was really a writer. So I picked up guitar, I picked up, piano, like I said, flute, and of course, most kids have to play recorder. It's just,
sure,
at some point in their life. And, but, I was never on the concert pianist track, and it was just like, okay, I'm playing this and I like this and I'll play a little and then I'll just start to create. I'll play a little and then I'll start to create, It's always like I was moving into that realm. So, did I over-answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. No, don't worry about it. What was the first tune you ever learned?
Well, the first tune I ever learned was the one I wrote when I was at summer camp. I think I was 11, and okay. I was learning guitar, and again, I was playing, and then I just started writing. It was like I was playing, and then I just would do my own thing, and it was called The Road, and I remember writing it, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just kind of writing this tune, because I was practicing, and then started writing, and then I was playing it. So there was someone else, some other gal who was taking lessons, and she heard me, and I heard her singing my song later in the day.
Wow, when you were 11?
Yes.
Wow, that's awesome.
And it was. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know what that whole mechanism was. But I remember that. And I didn't, and that was the first experience that I had with writing. And then, I just went grew up and whatever, and just, tried a bunch of different things. But I got into songwriting and getting more serious about being a musician a little bit later. So.
I have to tell you, Amanda, I'm very jealous because I think every songwriter would love to hear someone singing and playing their song, and you had that at 11. That's just insane. That is so cool.
It was trippy. It was
Yeah. What made you want to write lyrics? Was there some kind of calling, or what made you really, do you remember? What made you start focusing on lyrics?
I do. After that first experience was really intense, I was mostly, believe it or not, I was a jazz singer. And I went to college. I got an undergrad, and I studied with Bill Dixon and a few other amazing people. And I wanted to go to music school. I wasn't really sure. My dad wanted me to go to New England Conservatory because, you know, he's my dad. And I wanted to go to Berkeley and study pop. And I was, I was working. Okay, so here's the big reveal. I mean, you know, we all have stories, right? I had studied with a spiritual teacher, and I was mostly doing jazz, and then he sort of steered me into the pop realm, and before that I wanted to go to school, but then I started studying with him, so I put school on hold because, you know, I wanted to be enlightened and all that stuff. And then I stayed with him for a bunch of years, and it was amazing. But then I kind of felt the pull to go back to school. So I was mostly a singer. And even, you know, I was doing pop. I was mostly a jazz singer. So I was working, you know, just to pay my rent. I was actually living with nuns at the time in New York City because the rent was
wow.
cheap. And I was working as I was working in a strip club as a waitress. I was a waitress, okay, which is, and you know, God bless strippers, whatever, you know, they are working, and I want you to know that in that world, people have certain ideas about who the women are that work in those clubs, waitress and strippers, whatever. But I want you to know that a lot of them were supporting their families, putting themselves through master's programs, okay? And this is like in downtown New York City. Anyway, so I was living with nuns, and I was working in a strip club as a waitress, okay? And I had...
Did the nuns allow that?
I did not report to them every day.
All right,
living there. They had a whole floor of nuns, you know, with the whatever it was called. I'm not Catholic like by birth. I like to say I'm a nice Jewish, Hindu, Christian, Buddhist. Okay, but you know, they accepted me, and I was very grateful. So anyway, I didn't report to them every day.
Okay.
And my spiritual journey, that's a whole other show, and I love talking about that whole other show. Right? So I had some dental issues, so I had to go to the dentist, and they gave me like laughing gas and stuff. And throughout this whole thing, you know, I was working at this club. I was just trying to make ends meet, and it was kind of this crazy situation. And I had this epiphany under laughing gas, having this dental surgery. I needed to go to Berkeley. No matter what, I had to get my body there. It was so strong. Like all my cells were pointing north. So I applied. I didn't tell anybody. And I went. And when I was there, I took a bunch of classes because I thought, well, I'm going to maybe be pop, but mostly jazz, you know. But I got into gospel. I got into pop. It totally flipped my world being at that school. And I took a songwriting class. And, I was learning theory and stuff like that. And I put this song together. And again, I didn't really know what I was doing because I'd written literally that one song when I was 11. And what's that?
No. I was going to say, yeah, Berkeley Music School is very reputable. That's very impressive.
It was amazing. And I remember I was I went to Boston, and I was in the lobby, and I called the registrar, and I said, did I get in? She's like, well, we can't give out that information. And I said, okay, well, let's say I really wanted to get in. If I got in, would I be happy right now? And she said, yes. And I started yelling in the lobby.
Yeah.
So
I got to ask you a question that's on my mind here. Have you ever written a song about nuns or strip clubs? And they don't have to be in the same song. Because that just sounds like great material.
No, but that is a fantastic idea. And, Billy Joel wrote Stiletto. And, of course, there are lots of songs on them. But, I'm going to put that on the docket, and I am going to see what I can do about that. That's really fantastic. Thank you so much. We get your ideas from everywhere.
No problem.
And I know this is like a Shaggy Dog story. I was getting to my, why I was started writing songs, but you can interrupt me at any time. As you can see, I can really, talk.
No, it's okay. You know what? You have words flowing out of you, and that's why you're a songwriter, right?
I guess so. There are a lot of reasons, but just to tie a bow on the story, so I was taking a songwriting class and I put the song together and I recorded it, and I didn't really even know what it would sound like, because I was using my musicianship but also theory. And then when I heard it recorded back, I remember I was sitting on a bench in one of the hallways, and I loved what I wrote. I was in absolute ecstasy. I could not believe that had come out of me. I couldn't believe it. And I was sitting there smiling, and someone I didn't even know walked by. He's like, "Wow, you must be really happy. That must be a really good song." And I was like, "Yeah." It's just something that I wrote. Like, I didn't know that I could do that. So that's why. So that was actually just a song without lyrics, but I knew at that moment that I wanted to be a songwriter, because it was so fantastic. That's something that came out of me, and I didn't really have the best self-esteem, to say the least. I wasn't all that confident. I just was, when I get an idea in my head, I just kind of, go for it. But it doesn't mean that, like, it doesn't mean I thought I was all that plus tax and, bag of chips.
Sure.
And all. So when I liked something that I did, I was so ecstatic. It was incredible. So that's when I knew I wanted to be a songwriter. And then I started writing lyrics. And the lyrics that I would write, it's part of my spiritual journey. Like, music is really part and parcel of my spiritual journey, because I honestly don't feel like I write anything. I just take dictation. I always say that, just take dictation, and that's really like the absolute truth for me.
You're a conduit,
so,
What's your spirit animal, Amanda? What would you say is your spirit animal?
Spirit animal. Oh, okay. Well, I trained in martial arts, and my Sifu said that my spirit animal was tiger.
Okay. Yeah. And how often do you feel in a given day that you act like a tiger? It's pretty much the best aspects of tiger medicine, I would say, are just focusing on your prayer or what you want and going after it with a single-pointed focus. And I try and do that at my most enlightened moments, but I have a lot of unenlightened moments. So I would say that I would like to say that every moment is a tiger moment, but okay. I don't always. It's sometimes subsumed under perhaps, I don't want to say a weaker nature, but maybe a less awakened nature. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give a aspiring songwriter that's just getting in the business?
Keep going. Be authentic to who you are. That is the most important thing. And also, I would say, and I said I didn't have the greatest confidence, but it is important to be confident in what you're doing and to know that whatever you're doing, as long as you do it with every part of you, even you might not think that you're ready for prime time or whatever, but as long as you believe in what you're doing, as long as you love what you're doing, be authentic. That is the most important thing, and keep doing it. And also, be in a community. It's very hard to be a songwriter in isolation. Of course, you can do it, and and you can feel and drink a lot and feel all bad about yourself. But if you really want to make a business of it, and you really want to go for it, you want to be in a community of like-minded people. So you have a mastermind group. You want to keep doing it, and through that, you will meet people, and then through those people, you meet other people, and you'll find your tribe, and you'll be more motivated to keep writing and to really think that you can actually do something with it instead of, thinking that you're a victim of the industry in isolation, because that's
Yeah.
easy to do.
Who's the most memorable person you've collaborated with as a songwriter or musician?
Well, oh my gosh, there are so many.
What's the one that just pops out at you?
Sam. Sam, gosh, his last name is escaping me. Sam, what's your freaking last name? Sam,
That's all right.
Peck. Sam Peck. Okay, sorry.
What's memorable about it? Like, what stuck out about it?
Okay. Well, I was living in Nashville, and there are writers' rooms in Nashville. And, there's an etiquette, right? And because you might be accused of copyright infringement if you hear something or get involved in something that you're not supposed to, right? But I was waiting for my turn for my writer's room, and Sam was in there with a gal named Julie Grower. I eventually wrote with both of them. And they're playing this song, they're writing the song, and they cannot get the hook. And I'm listening, and the hook is like pounding in my ears, and I'm sitting on my hands, and I'm like, I know I shouldn't do this. But after I was sitting there for like 10 minutes, and I'm like, I just yell out the hook. And I hear Sam like practically throw his guitar on the ground. Oh, I'm not going to cuss. Oh, blank. Now I have to give away a third. And he rips the door open, and I'm standing there, and he's like 6'2", and I'm like 5 feet. I say I'm 5'2" on certain resumes, but I'm staring up at him, and I'm like trying to look all innocent, because it just I had to say it was just bursting out of me. He's like just looking at me, and I'm looking at him.
That's
After
fun.
a moment, he says, "Well, come in." And so we finished the song, and then I ended up writing lots of songs with him, and so. Yeah.
And I like that about Nashville, how everything is divided evenly no matter what you've contributed. But, okay, before we get to your contact information, I got one last question for you. I give you a tiger. You can't give it away or sell it. What do you do with the tiger?
Is it a baby tiger?
Sure, why not?
Oh my gosh. Well, if I can't give it away or sell it, I'm going to keep it. I'm gonna raise it. I'm going to take it to a trainer. I'm going to make sure that, it doesn't eat me. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Tell me a little bit about where listeners can find more information about you and where can they purchase your music.
Okay. You can go to iTunes and you can punch in Amanda B or Amanda Best. You can go to Spotify. And I have a whole album of, I call it emotronic music that I did in Nashville, Crew 22. And the album is Mandarava. That's Mandarava. And you can also go to a new platform called Timbredio.com. And if you go to Timbredio.com/artist/Amanda B, and then there are a bunch of numbers. If you can find me, and you can back me. You can back me as an artist, and you can find me there and listen to my music there. Also, Mandarava was my second album, and the first one was I Could Make You Believe, and that's still on Amazon. There aren't too many left, but you can email me if you want a CD, or if you want more information about me. You can email me at producermissm@gmail.com. And let me know what you want, what you think of the music, and all that good stuff.
Sounds great, Amanda. So now we're going to listen to Amanda's song, Blame in the Rain. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Songwriter.
Okay, have a great night.
I've never seen a storm like this, no. Yeah, it's really coming down. And like a fool, I'm pleading, but the clouds won't quit, no. And I damn the drops that hit the ground. But blaming the rain, like yelling at a ghost. that doesn't come, and then cursing the phone like punching the wall. But I'm the one that bleeds. It's like there's nothing I can do to bring you back to me, and putting it all on you for leaving me this way. It's like blaming the rain. Barefoot in my sundress, your arms wrapped around me, and for a moment our past disappeared. But I heard the thunder, so I said, it's getting late, instead of what you needed to hear. Blaming the rain, like yelling at a ghost, like the call that doesn't come, and then cursing the phone like punching the wall. Oh, but I'm the one that bleeds. It's like there's nothing I can do to bring you back to me, and putting it all on you for leaving me this way. It's like blaming the rain. You were on that slip road in the fading light, maybe still upset we didn't make it right. Were you reaching for your phone? I guess we'll never know. Oh, how could I have let you go? Blaming the rain, like yelling at a ghost, like the call that doesn't come, and then cursing the phone, like punching the wall. Oh, but I'm the one that bleeds. It's like there's nothing I can do to bring you back to me, and putting it all on you for leaving me this way. It's like blaming the rain. I've never seen a storm like this, no. Yeah, it's really coming down.
songwritershow.com, your destination for songwriting news, interviews, and community.
This is Sarantos. We're back from our wonderful song, Blame in the Rain by Amanda. Before we bring on our next guest, I just want to talk a little bit, since this is October, of course it's Halloween. Halloween is one of the best times of the year for me, and I grew up as a kid with so many Halloween parties that kind of come to the forefront of my mind. What I really like about Halloween is how carefree people are. There's nothing like, just like us songwriters, we write lyrics, we put music, we put together these songs. In Halloween, you get to be someone else. You get to put on a costume and pretend that you're Luke Skywalker, or pretend that you're your childhood hero, whoever that is. And I think it's a wonderful time of year as the fall approaches to enjoy Halloween.
And now, welcome this week's special guest.
So without further ado, we're going to talk about our next guest, which is James Goy Jr. James, a.k.a. the Attract Money Guru, is the best-selling author of How to Attract Money Using Mind Power, a book that sets a new standard for concise, no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point self-help books. He condenses and simplifies abstract metaphysical concepts and powerful success principles, making his life-changing information accessible to everyone. James has written 9 books so far, 2 of which are his song lyrics. You can see James in the groundbreaking docudrama Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy. Welcome to the Songwriter Show, James.
Hello, Sarantos. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. You have a very interesting story, and I thought you'd make a wonderful interview. So tell us a little bit about these 2 books that you released with your lyrics.
Right. Well, basically, my song lyrics, volumes 1 and volume 2, and I have 50 songs in each. So I didn't. I wrote a few songs in my early 20s, but I didn't actually sit down and start writing songs, purposefully, until I was 40 years old, and so that's like 20 years now. And I copyrighted the collection way back when. I don't know how long ago, 10, 15 years ago. A lot of them. Some of them are new, but I finally, now that I'm an independent publisher, and I publish my own self-help books, I was able to at least get the words out there, even though I haven't gotten around to getting the music in a suitable form for the public yet.
That's wonderful. And tell me a little bit about, when did you first start writing lyrics? How old were you?
Well, I'll have to go way back to when I was a child, because I just spontaneously, like, I never remember being taught or encouraged or anything, but I just spontaneously started writing little poems. I got a very rhyming kind of a mentality, and so I was writing poems like when I was very, very young. I don't know what age. And so when I finally, learned a little bit on the guitar and whatnot, it was kind of a natural, and I'm really good with words. Like, I memorized the lyrics to songs easily and all of that. But I was in my early 20s and involved with some friends and group of people, and I wrote a few songs about that time. They kind of just popped out. I didn't even think I'm going to sit down and write a song. But then I didn't do anything for another 15 years or something. And then one day, I was living up in Oregon at the time. It was Y2K was looming on us, and I just thought, you know what, I should write. I just felt like I got to sit down and write a song, and I didn't know where that came from. And I wrote 3 songs that weekend, and a bunch more that week, and then. And so it's been on and off since then. But it's always a very interesting experience, because it feels to me like I can pick up the guitar and just start messing around with a couple of chords, and all of a sudden a feeling grips me. And it's like there's a song there. I write the lyrics and the music at the same time. I write the lyrics out, and I also capture the melody and all of that on the recorder, because the next day I would not remember it, and I don't know how to write music. And that's pretty much, my process. Almost every song I've written has been in one sitting, and sometimes more than one in a sitting. There's been a few songs that I've worked on in a few separate sittings, but most of them just kind of like pop out. And then when I hear them, it's so weird. Even with my books, it's like, well, it seems like this was always there. How did somebody not already write this? It's kind of a funny, your last guest talked about it, like being a conduit, you mentioned, or something. And that's really what it feels like. That's the experience I have.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to you talk, because I had the same experience as a kid where I started writing poems, and the rhyming thing you talked about. And it got me thinking, how many songwriters actually maybe start with poetry when they're kids? And obviously it's much simpler poetry, but it's a very, very interesting correlation. I've never thought about it till you talked about it now.
Right. It just seemed like a natural transition, once you know how to put some chords together on the guitar or whatever. I'm surprised I didn't do it much sooner. I just really didn't think of it. But when it finally popped into my mind that, hey, I can maybe write a song, and then there's the song, it's just it's an interesting experience.
Yeah, the other thing that's fascinating, the more people I talk to, neither one of us is 18, but what I tell the world is, who cares? I think there was this pressure and this stigma that you had to be very young to make it in the music business, and with streaming and just what's happened recently, I think that's all gone out the window. And I love hearing stories like yourself that, hey, I started writing at 40. I don't think it matters. I think no matter how old you are, I think last year at the Grammys, somebody that was a composer won a Grammy for the first time. He's been in this industry for a while, but he was like 70 or 80. And I was so proud of that person. And I love hearing that people are chasing their dream, whether they're 11, whether they're 40. I don't think any of that matters.
Right. And I agree. I published my first book, How to Attract Money Using Mind Power, I was about 48 years old, maybe 11, almost 12 years ago. And now I've published 10 books since. And the way I look at it is, I tell people, when you finally find the light switch and turn the light on, it doesn't matter how long it was dark for. So, I believe in concepts such as divine time. I mean, some people are a prodigy, and at 2 years old, they're playing, some Beethoven or something that they've only heard once. And other people, you might be 50 years old before you pick up a guitar and start doing something. And I think everybody has their own journey.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. What is your advice to someone that is actively touring? Do you think as a songwriter you have to tour to be successful, or do you think that it doesn't matter anymore?
Well, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, just because I haven't really done anything like professionally in that way. I haven't toured, and I'm not a professional, performer or anything. So for me, I look at myself as a songwriter, and sure, I can play my own songs or whatever. What I like to tell people is that I'm self-taught on the guitar, and I taught myself to sing. So basically, I learned both from someone who didn't know anything about either, if that gives anybody an idea.
Sure.
But I sing and play well enough to be to get my points of my songs across, and so that somebody who's maybe is a performer could hear what it's more or less supposed to sound like. And so for me, I can't really relate to the performer part. I mean, I've done open mics, at coffee shops and things like that over the years here and there, or played in front of groups of people. But I really gravitate to the writing itself, and not so much the drive to be the one that's singing the songs or whatever.
Sure. And I think you bring up another interesting point about being self-taught. And our last guest went to the Berklee School of Music, which, again, is, wonderful school. But I read a great book called The Talent Code. And I'll give it a quick shout out now, because it's not just about practice and whether you're self-taught, whether you go to school. It's about always pushing yourself to get better. And there's something that they call deliberate practice. And I really encourage people in any line of work to read that book, because what you're talking about, if you have this hunger and you're always trying to get better, you could sit and play the scales, or you could sit and sing something or write a book, but, it isn't active. It isn't helping you get better. When you have deliberate practice and you're purposely, it's hard, it's challenging, and you're learning something and you're trying to get better, as opposed to just breezing through scales that you can do it, very easily. None of that helps you. And I think it's really important to people that are self-taught like yourself to keep pushing yourself, because you don't want to get stagnant.
Right. And, I've had an interesting journey, just because I've actually, laid the guitar and the pen down for even years at a time. I've gone years over the, since I first started taking guitar lessons when I was 10 years old. And my parents were divorced, and my mother's boyfriend played in a band. He was the lead singer and guitarist in a band, and I had been taking guitar lessons for 10 months, and she said, "Oh, well, show him what you know," and I played a little bit, and he said, "That's all you know after 10 months?" My father was paying for the lessons, and that crushed me. He said, "Oh, give up that class. I'll teach you how to play guitar." Well, yeah. I gave up the class, and he never taught me anything. And but then I picked up the guitar again when I was maybe 14 or 15, and just started hanging around with the people in the neighborhood, and some of them play guitars, and then just kind of pick up things from there. But I've literally put it down for years at a time, and I'm just doing other things. But then when I pick it up, I'm like, how could I have not done this for so long? Because it feels so right. And again, I guess everyone has their own journey. But when I come back to it, it's like, oh man, because I really, in all of this time, I should have written. I mean, I can sit down and write 3 songs, 4 songs in one day, in one sitting. I've done that. But yet, when you look at how many songs I've written over all of these years, it's very, very minimal. And it's just because I haven't put sufficient focus on it, really.
Well, and I get that, because there's a school of thought that you need to write every day. And then there's people like yourself, and I do it too sometimes, where I can write 4 songs in a couple hours, but I think it's good to take a break to refresh your brain and your mind. And I don't know about you, but you could be inspired anywhere, whether it's the gym, whether it's watching a TV show. So I think sometimes taking some time away is very important. And then you have a whole other thing going on, which I also have written some books, but tell us about that, because that is that's a lot more challenging than writing lyrics to a song. it's a lot more time intensive, isn't it?
Certainly. I mean, when you can sit down in 30 minutes and write a song, and it be pretty polished up, or the next day you tweak a few words. But like my first book took me literally like from, working title and the first page or so to publishing it. It took me 9 long years. And it's a short book. You can read it in a sitting or two. But I read hundreds of books in that time, and I quote 160 of those books. I collected hundreds of quotes and quoted 160. And but other books now I have sat down and written in like 2 days, literally 2 writing sessions. They're short books. Some of them I've written in 4, but then you can't just tweak that the next day and then it's done. I go over and over and over, I'll obsess over a single comma for, 2 hours. And invariably I can read one of my books, 25 times. And every single time I will find at least one tiny little thing that, I want to move this punctuation, or, here's a better word. I'll look up the meaning of a word that's not quite the word. The book is very tight, but then it's the tiny little details, and that does take time. So it's both for me are solitary endeavors, and I'm sort of I am a recluse basically at this time of my life, but I've always been kind of more or less a lone wolf, but it's got more so as I've gotten older. But so I really love both processes, but they are certainly very different, although there's an aspect in writing, not so much the first book, but a lot of the books that have followed, where it's like it's a feeling like you get with the song and you sit down and write it. I've actually written 2 or 3 of my books not thinking I was going to write a book, like I was going to write a short article or something. And actually the last book that I just published just very recently, The Supernatural Power of Thought, I was actually looking around on Amazon. I wasn't even thinking of writing anything. And I ran across a title of a book and my mind inserted a word. The first words were the supernatural power of. My mind stuck in the word thought. And I thought, what a great title for a book. And then I thought, I have to write that. And then I started writing it right then and there. I wrote 5 chapters. Within 4 days, I had the book. So it's really a very freakish. And then 4 days later, you're saying to yourself, what just happened? And you read this book and you can't even believe that you're the guy that wrote it. You never had any forethought. You didn't make an outline. You had no idea for any of it. And all of a sudden you turn around and you have a book. It's very freaky.
Sure. So if you could get rid of a decade and you have 2 choices, the 70s or the 80s, which one would you get rid of?
Oh my God, that's the hardest choice in the world. Because I grew up more or less in the 10 to 20, in the 70s, and then the 20 to the 30. If I had to give one up, I'll say it's going to be the 80s, because the 70s is really what I grew up in. But I wouldn't give it up lightly. I'd hold on
awesome.
real tight. Yeah,
that's all right. I'm an 80s child, so I'd have to fight you, but that's beside the point.
Oh, that's funny.
So, are you more of a hunter or a gatherer?
Definitely more of a gatherer. Yeah. Yeah, my father was a bow hunter actually, and but could never get me interested in actually being a hunter in that sense of the word. So I would say definitely a gatherer.
So I'm going to ask you a question here. I'd like to ask people about scams and being ripped off, and usually you can answer it with books too, but in music or with your books and your authorship, tell us about a scam. Try to warn some of the listeners out there. What's the worst thing that's happened to you that you got ripped off that you want to warn us about?
I don't know that I mean, I have recognized scenarios before I have given any money up. And I will say for anybody who's out there who's an author or a writer, that there are a whole lot of people out there, companies that are offering a whole lot. And it sounds like you're going to make you a bestseller, and it's only going to cost you, $4,000, $6,000, up to $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 or more. So for writers, I would say, learn what you need to learn to be in charge of the process, because there's a huge price to pay, not only up front, but even in royalties later when you just because if you don't already have a platform, getting a publisher, a traditional publisher, is virtually, the chances of that are zip, just so slim. So you're going to end up having to do it yourself, but be very careful of how you go about it, and you put time and energy into it more so than money, because the money can go very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the strangest compliment you've ever gotten for your lyrics or books?
On the books, it is the strangest is when people tell me, this is how I really strange things, like, this is how I've always thought, but I never knew I thought that way until I read your book. That kind of a thing. Like, they almost feel like they wrote it to themselves. Someone told me, that's a song. That's a book I would have written to myself. That's kind of strange. When they say that's the book I always wanted to read, or something, that's not really a strange compliment. And with my lyrics, people they're haunted by my lyrics, and I don't know if that's a strange compliment or not. But and I have a wide variety of feelings, moods, but some of them are like a bit just haunting, kind of a thing. They kind of grab you and hold on to you in a way that is so uncomfortable. I think that it's comfortable. It's kind of hard to explain, and people have tried to explain it, and it's hard for them too. Okay.
If you could teach a college course on any subject your heart desires, what would it be?
Absolutely, it would be mind power. It would be how the human mind, and this is what the mystics have been teaching, and quantum physics teaches us now, is that the human mind, through thought, feeling, imagery, and bolstered and backed by even the words we speak, has an absolute effect beyond what would seem to be our control. So in other words, when we think and feel an image and speak in certain ways, things out there in the world happen. And I specialize in teaching people how to attract money, but these techniques can be used for every area of life. And I would love to go in and teach the people just coming, emerging into the work world, into the real world, that it's not just about who you know, what you know, your degree, your connections, business cycles, the economy. It's beyond all of that, and as the foundation of that, if you learn how to use mind power, if you learn how to use your mind correctly, then you'll set up all kinds of synchronicities where no matter what's going on out there, you can thrive and bring your visions to fruition.
Okay, tell us, where can our listeners find out more information about you, and where can they purchase your books?
Certainly. The best place to go to find out about me is just to go to my website, and that's my name, James, GOIJR.com. And when the people are there, I encourage them to sign up for my free monthly Mind, Power, and Money e-zine. Comes out once a month. And when they do, they get a free copy of my book, Attract Money Forever, which is the companion book to How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. And I have 10 books now. They're all available in Kindle editions and print editions on Amazon.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, James, for being on the show.
Certainly. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Okay, and you too.
So now we're going to hear, I have a special surprise for you guys. I released this song 2 years ago, but since it's October and since Halloween is coming up, and I already told you it's one of my favorite holidays of the year, after Christmas, of course, we're going to hear now a Halloween song. I hope you enjoy it.
Filthy rabid zombies, eager to maul, and vampires flossing and shoving in your face. Everywhere I see, orange and black, October 31st, a day to worry. Kids on the street, trick-or-treating in packs, teens bewitched, telling scary stories. Halloween song, a time to listen to thriller. This is the Halloween song, have dinner with killers. Halloween song. Celebrate superstition. This is a Halloween song. Honor the tradition. Halloween song. This is a Halloween song. This is a Halloween song. And for a Halloween party, and Halloween never needs a reason to be the best party of the season. Name this night All Hallows Eve. A frightful delight meant to thrill and excite. Dracula later renamed it Halloween. Everywhere black cats and ghosts, Bloody Mary in my mirror, itching a fight. Michael, Jason, Freddy are your hosts, so please don't turn off the lights. Halloween song. Time to listen to thriller. This is a Halloween song. Dinner with a killer. This is a Halloween song. Celebrate superstition. This is a Halloween song. Honor the tradition. Halloween song. This is a Halloween song. This is a Halloween song. And for a Halloween party, and Halloween never needs a reason to be the best party of the season. Witches in my closet, but I got plasma guns, so they better watch it. I said they better watch it. Halloween song. Time to listen to thriller. This is a Halloween song. Dinner with a killer. This is a Halloween song. Celebrate superstition. This is a Halloween song. Honor the tradition. Halloween song. This is a Halloween song. This is a Halloween song. And for a Halloween party, and Halloween never needs a reason to be the best party of the season.
Thank you for listening to The Songwriter Show. To keep the momentum going, head over to www.songwritershow.com and join our free music community of artists, songwriters, and producers. That's www.songwritershow.com.